So we have our first meeting of the, I guess it's the Ad Hoc Committee on Alcohol and Drug Abuse is the official title. I'd like to call it to order and have introductions. We'll start with you, Pete.
Pete Peterson.
Elby Gray Jackson.
Amy Domboski.
Bill Evans. And if our folks in the audience wouldn't mind introducing themselves so we know all's here.
Amanda Moser, Deputy Clerk.
Devin Kelly, ADN.
John Phelps, citizen.
Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the agenda? Are there any changes or corrections or suggestions for the agenda? Only thing I would like to add is, I didn't have it on here, but, and it could be part of the new business work plan, but I think one of the first orders of business is to establish how frequently and when we'll meet. So you might want to just put that ahead of the work plan. Seeing no other comments, we'll go with that. So that would be the first issue of business, is how frequently do you think this committee should get together? As you saw by the sort of draft work plan I put together, my view of our committee work is going to involve a lot of work. I think the issue we're tasked with tackling is very huge and has multiple different facets, and I think if we're going to do it right, and I'm sure everybody wants to do it right, it's going to take considerable work. So I was thinking that it might be a committee that may need to meet twice a month, but I don't know how frequently assembly committees do that, or if that's unheard of, or is great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not necessarily unheard of, but usually committees, even ad hocs, meet once a month. I understand where you're coming from in terms of the possible need to meet twice a month, but what things that I have going on, I just don't think it's possible for me to do it twice a month. It would be a little too much, but for me. But once a month, I can definitely make that happen personally. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I appreciate that, and that's the kind of feedback I was looking for, someone to save me from myself. Amy, Pete, do you guys have any?
Well, this is something that I've been passionate about, so I don't mind meeting more than once a month, but I totally am fine if we meet once a month and as needed. If we need to throw in an extra meeting, we can do that, I think, because I think especially as we bring some of the community stakeholders and different people, I think we'll see this evolve. And if we start to find areas where we can create solutions and there's something in the hopper, we may need to meet more often just to kind of get it going. So,
Pete?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think maybe if we meet more often at the beginning to sort of get things up and running, then maybe we could scale back to once a month after that. Just a suggestion.
Well, those ideas run the complete gamut, so that's good. I think since we don't have things lined up yet, we can start with, I think, once a month, and I think Mr. Bowski's suggestion to add if we need to makes sense. And also we can, I don't know if there's any kind of precedential restriction on the length of time a meeting. I see all the meetings we have are generally an hour. Perhaps we might be able to go an hour and a half or 2 hours to get more bang for our buck in our meetings. Mr. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am like Mr. Domboski and adamant about dealing with this issue. As a matter of fact, I think everybody's familiar with a committee that I have formed since 2009. It's called CBOP, Take Back Our Parks. Yeah, so this is really a subject that I'm really honored to be a part of. And I would suggest that if we meet once a month, that we should have 2-hour meetings. Because that would probably take up, the difference in meeting twice a month from the beginning. Because usually meetings are an hour, but meetings are based on how much time we need. And I think that we're definitely going to need 2 hours if we meet once a month. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. No, I think that makes sense, and at least for now, I'll instruct the clerk's office that we'll get a schedule that meets once a month for 2-hour meetings. Is there any preference as to everybody's schedule as to when those occur?
for me, Mondays are generally a bad day, but I can, as long as we're done by 2 o'clock, I prefer mornings or early afternoon, but as long as we're done by 2.
Okay.
So, I mean, Wednesdays or Thursdays are ideal for me. but I don't know what others.
Mary Jackson.
Well, you know, I'm on the Public Safety Committee that meets Wednesdays, and the Budget Finance Committee, which we're all a part of, that meets Thursdays, once a month. But I'm sure that the clerk can work it so that it's not the same day, the same Wednesdays and Thursday. My preference is not morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
No 8 a.m.?
No, sorry. I'm telling you like it is. I know. No. But, you know, 11 is good, or, because I know Amy has to be done by 2. But, yeah, so 11 works for me.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, we'll work on getting a Wednesday, Thursday, 11 o'clock to 1, I guess would be then. Thank you for that, and we'll roll with that. The next item on the agenda is just the work plan. I drafted up this document just kind of stream of consciously to at least put on paper some of the ideas or some of the issues I think we will need to address on this committee. It's by no means, even though it's kind of long, it's by no means comprehensive. I've already recognized that one of the areas I didn't include was to search out other communities and what has passed for success in other communities. We're not the only community dealing with this issue. I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel on anything, and we should make a concerted effort to find out what's worked elsewhere and what hasn't worked in other places. So that would be one of the things I'd want to add. What I'd like to do, since you didn't have much time to look at this or study this, is just give it to you today, let you guys take it back with you, think about areas that aren't included in here that you think we need to address, or some things in here that maybe you don't think we should address, and we can provide comments through the clerk's office and make amendments to this and finalize it hopefully at our next meeting. Again, I have no pride of authorship in this. Feel free to change anything or add to anything that you see. The only thing I do want to point out is I think as what I put down as draft objectives, I tend to think on these problems pretty linearly.
Yep, you got
I
it.
can't say that right. But I think it's really important that we really understand the problem we're addressing first. I think all of us have had experiences with this problem in different angles, but I don't know if we have a complete understanding of it. So I think that's going to be a huge part of it. I don't think we can effectively solve or begin to solve the problem until we fully understand it. And I also put down here that I think avoiding the politicization, in other words, I can't really say, of the problem is going to be important. That there's perspectives for dealing with this problem from different political angles, of people that want to spend more money on treatment and people that want to have law enforcement crack down. And I think if we're going to be successful, I think we're going to have to draw from all sides and be willing to do that and not make it a political hand grenade or whatever the other term would be. And then the last point I had on there was just to have a bias toward action. There are a lot of committees out there that deal with this issue, a lot of different task forces that have dealt with it over time. Because it's such a difficult issue, a lot of them just tend to be those meetings and it doesn't go any far. I think we have to be really committed and be certain that no matter what we do at the end of this process, we work as hard as we can to turn those ideas into action and make sure something actually occurs instead of just a year or two of meetings on it. Are there any comments on that? Yes, Ms.
Thank you, Mr.
Jackson.
Chairman. I'm really glad that you said that, because I don't want us to spend a year or two on this ad hoc committee and then do a report and then it's filed somewhere like so many reports are. I want us to really, come up with something that can be implemented in all of the areas that are mentioned in the work plan. So, but I do have a question though. Okay, have bias towards action. I'm not sure what that actually means.
I think it just means what you just said, is that it's not just a committee for gathering information and making a report, that it's going to result in actual action taking place.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Kowalski.
Thank you. I would say, as I was looking through this, we've started recognizing from an action standpoint, the Assembly has already proactively started to try to address these issues over the last year with CSP, with paramedics, but we recognize that we have a fundamental issue that isn't necessarily being tackled head on. And so that's why I'm so excited that this board, this committee is being formed. And I think the things that we have to recognize, when I was looking at these lists, and I thought it was great that police, fire, CSP was on here. Another big player is Department of Health and Human Services. So, because they have some of the treatment programs, and when we talk about reaching out to other groups, it's going to be Catholic Social Services, it's going to be the Aquila House, it's going to be some of these different things. But the other thing we have to be mindful of, a big part of this is our interaction with the state legislature. And we're very fortunate to have Pete with us because he knows that system, he's worked in it. And as we are mindful of that, anything that we identify early that may need to be addressed, i.e. the alcohol tax, which the state keeps half of, those types of issues that were supposed to be meant for treatment and different things that maybe haven't come through yet, those are items that we can bring down in January and start coming back saying, okay, look at this is our fundamental, but we have to be mindful of their timeframes too, otherwise it's going to drag out to a 2-3 year process. So, that's why I think when I read this, a lot of these questions, they were like spot on, because they're all things we have to ask ourselves. And I think it's going to be important for us to identify which programs are already there. The Aquila House this year, how much was their grant? Was it $4 million?
I was told there was a $4 million grant, but I also found out today at lunch that they want to break that down so groups have to apply for that individually with a qualified program or policy or something. They're not just going to give somebody $4 million. They want to dole that out in small increments to different groups.
One of the interesting things, and Chris, I'm blanking on his.
Judy,
No.
downtown Florida? Who you
No,
talking about?
I'm talking about Chris, who works for the Aquila House. He's
Oh,
always
I don't have
with
any idea.
the Lucky Wishbone.
Constant.
What's his last name?
Constant.
Yes, that's exactly
Oh,
what it is.
okay.
Thank you, Devin. Chris Constant, it was interesting having him come to our community council meeting all the way out in Chudiak, but he did recognize that my representative in that area is Representative Stoltz, and so I think he was there specifically because, the finance committee. But he came out and gave a presentation to our community council, and the interesting dynamic is we've had these things where individual nonprofits apply to the state for, okay, let's do this to combat this, or let's do this. And this time they're taking a little bit different of a role in that the Aquila House is kind of the point, and they're kind of coordinating these different nonprofits. And a big portion of it is dealing with some of these issues. And so that's why somebody like Chris, to bring him in and to say, okay, what exactly are you guys doing? Where's the money going? What are the type of programs that you're looking at? So if we can create this interweave, this net of all these different opportunities for us to leverage each other's abilities, I think we'll be far more successful. But that's why I say it's key to understand what state funding is out there, what state funding or potentials for state funding there might possibly be, because when it comes down to it, yeah, we have a problem, and ultimately to fix it, it's going to cost money. And the state initially, when they passed that alcohol tax, one of the big selling points was it was for treatment, right? It was going to go back to the local communities, and I think we should reevaluate that distribution. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
Pete?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I'm looking at the identified partners. I immediately thought about the Fairview Business Association because they've been dealing with this problem for a significant amount of time. And I think they have some ideas and plans of action that they would like to implement or at least in development and maybe soon being ready for implementation. And we might want to contact them and have them provide a report or an update on what activities they're involved in and what suggestions they might have.
I think that's a good suggestion. And that is kind of listed on here as sort of the first step is identifying our partners, because I think, as Ms. Kowalski said, that we're not going to be able to really tackle this issue alone. There's a lot of organizations and good people out there already working on various aspects of this, and we need to to identify them, bring them into this process, and work with them to take a comprehensive approach. Yes, Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For starters, we're going to have Department of Health and Human Services, correct? With all the criteria below, just like police, fire, CSP, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I think it's really a really good idea to maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, to identify, maybe we can do it today, identify partners and send them this document and have them take a look at it. And let them know when we're going to meet again so that they can come join us at our next meeting and have some answers to a lot of the questions we have. You know, I think they could be really, really helpful in dealing with some of the, like, for example, location of property on nature, you know, some of the issues that are in this. So I think that might be a good approach. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's a great idea. Towards that end, what, since we're talking about it now, what entities or organizations do you think, off the top of your head here, we should include on that and send this work plan to and get their feedback before our next meeting? Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, Catholic Social Services. Because they contacted all of us, I'm sure, recently about this particular issue, wanting to meet with us. So here's their grant opportunity. So Catholic Social Services, and then of course Healer House was mentioned. I would even involve Covenant House. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then I would make sure that we reach out to representatives from each of the departments that we have talked about. CSP will be different because the contract's changing hands, so,
Yeah, I don't know if any of the
but
staff-
Department of Health and Human Services manages that contract.
Right.
So, you know, I would start with them. I know there's a battalion chief that I referenced last year who used to work down on the Vegas Strip, and he had some out-of-the-box kind of ways that he saw Las Vegas deal with the homeless issue on the Strip. And so, I don't know if you specifically want to name him or just ask the chief or somebody to come here and from the police department too. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, why don't we can mention specifically him and route it through the chief and say we think it'd be helpful. I'd be glad to do that.
So those are government agencies, but I mean, Catholic Social Services, Keelan, and Covenant House, I think are the three big ones, don't you think?
And we'll use Fairview.
Yeah.
Oh, in Fairview, yeah.
Rural Cap, also, they're managing the Red Roof Inn, and it might be a group that could reach out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the idea of the Fairview Business Development, whatever it's called. But then I also think about, you know, Mountain View, the, you know, Boys Club over there, and just different segments. And so how I mean, we don't want to bombard ourselves with, you know, a whole lot of folks because we'll get lost. You know, so I'm almost thinking that initially we not invite the Fairview Business Development folks. We work with these agencies that have been in place for years, you know, and a representative from each one of our public safety departments initially. And then as we move on, we can invite Fairview Business Development and maybe other agencies that have, you know, similar issues. But I think that maybe this is where we should start. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's wise not to bite off more than you can chew. Appreciate that. If there are any other agencies that you think of that we haven't listed as our initial contacts in the next day or so, just email. And I'll also work with the clerk's office in getting this coordinated and getting the word out to them as to what we're looking for and getting their input. Whether it's just in writing or whether they can show up for our next meeting, that'd be great. All right. And one of the other things I did want to point out, and just we've included the mission statement that the Assembly Chair came up with. And I think, at least for me, and it was something I was really insistent on getting into the mission statement, is that the end of this, you know, what we want to do is make Anchorage the model city for treating this problem. I think, you know, if we are successful at the end of the day, or I don't know how long it's going to take, and I'm not, you know, kidding myself, it's going to take a while. but that all of a sudden people in the lower 48 look at, well, Anchorage is a city that's really knows how to handle that problem and look to us for the solutions. So I think that has to be our just overarching goal as we go through this. The other comment I want to make, that something Mr. Bowski mentioned that triggered in my head, is I think we have to be very courageous on this committee and not be afraid to do or say anything just about it. It's a very sensitive topic, but I think people have to kind of lay their cards on the table and basically say what they think and think outside the box to some degree, not be constrained by what has failed in the past. I think this committee should be completely free to explore whatever they think might work, because it could be a solution that no one's thought of yet. And I think we have to be courageous in that regard.
I had one more comment. And it's something that just occurred to me when I was thinking about CSP the night that I went down and spent many hours at Sleep Off. One of the things that struck me was the gentleman that ran the center was remarking how high the Native population that he services is. I mean, close to 80%. It was very high. And I think, I know that the Native boards that I've engaged with, they really care about their shareholders and want to help them. And I think that's a voice we have to be mindful that probably shouldn't be neglected in this process. Is, I don't know that anybody has taken that step to say, okay, we identify, some of these groups are coming from, we know they're coming from villages. We know they're transplanting to Anchorage. But I don't think we should be afraid to engage the community and say, we want to help you. How do we do that? But we shouldn't be forcing something on them. They should be collaborative with us. So I just don't want to ignore some of the corporations that I know they have an interest in what happens to their shareholders if they're a big part of the population, which in the past I've been told they are. So I just want to put that out there because I don't think anybody's actually articulated it before.
Good job, thank you.
No, and that's a good example of one of the, you can't be afraid to say what seems obvious to you or what you're thinking. I had the same sort of idea, and that's why I thought it was very important that we understand the demographics of this issue of who, we have this kind of image of who the street people are and the homeless or the chronic inebriates, whatever we're going to call them. But I think we need to delve down, and there's a lot of groups that have information on this, and I think we need to try to get as good a sense as possible about who these people are, how old they are, what ethnic group, where they come from, what issues they're facing. All those things will help get good solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that we're in luck, because I'm pretty sure the health department has a bunch of those statistics already.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then another thing we probably need to look at is the 10-year homeless plan, that report that we got in May. We need to take a really good look at that, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then, thank you for those comments. I think if there are certain documents or plans or studies out there that you are aware of that you think would be good homework for this group to have, please let me know, and I'll make sure we get copies of them and get everybody on the same page with the background information that's already out there. That'd be great.
And that's one that, and we all got copies, but who knows where they are now. I mean, I still have mine because of this committee, but that's one that we need to hold on to. Thank you.
Any other comments for today regarding the work plan or next steps?
I just think this is a great starting point. I think you've done a very good job of starting to articulate some of the questions that we have to wrap our mind around in some of the, an organized way that we can actually get going. So I appreciate this very much. As far as, we're probably not there yet, but as far as our next meeting, when are you thinking it would be? I mean, are you thinking in September, or are you thinking in a couple weeks?
Probably, I'm really not thinking. Probably September at this point. It'll give us some time to reach out to these other organizations, give them some time to get their heads around some of the questions we've asked. And also during that time, we'll gather some of the background documents that we're talking about. So
Sounds good.
I think we have things we can do between now and then, but probably sometime in September.
Okay.
Ms. Grayjack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On phase 2, number A, I think the approach should be to directly talk to Health and Human Services, because I believe, as I just mentioned, that they have all of these statistics already.
That'd be nice. Will do.
Thank you.
Pete, Ms. Grayjack?
Just thinking about an article I read just I think maybe today about the governor's projected shortfall in the state budget in the vicinity of $2 billion. So I will certainly be happy to lobby to get additional money. I do think we have to be realistic in what our expectations are about getting money. And I know I've spoken to Chairman Flynn before about trying to get the second half of the alcohol tax to be used for what it was meant for, and he's been lobbying for that for years and has been unsuccessful. So we can try again, but obviously there's no guarantee.
Yes. Always comes down to money, and that may be a little difficult. Ms. Grayjack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to speak my mind. I'll put it that way. Thank you for your comments, Pete, and I understand that, but I don't ever give up, ever, no matter what the circumstances are. And this is an issue that has been a problem in our community as long as I've been here, 32 years. And if we, I mean, it's not just this community, it's, other communities within our state, our great state. And with that said, regardless of what the projections are, we still need to go forward and be adamant and proactive. And when we have our ducks in order, know exactly what it is we need to go forward and ask for that, regardless. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, appreciate that. And I think that, there's no problem that can't be improved upon. And I don't think any of us are naive enough to figure that at the end of this we're going to completely wipe out this problem
Right.
entirely. But I think if we take a multifaceted approach, I think we can certainly make progress and improve things greatly. And I think, other than, I wouldn't get too caught up with the state, because the state funding is an issue. I think it's something we will need to do. But there's also the issue of federal funding for a lot of this stuff. And I've been sort of curious about, I understand that there's a high population of Alaska Natives amongst this population we're talking about who have federally, protected health care, and whether there's abilities to tie into that for treatment options and things. I just think there's a lot of things in that to explore, and as long as we don't quit, I'm convinced we'll make progress. Any other comments?
I was just going to say, Albie said this has been a problem as long as she's been here. The first job I had when I first moved to Anchorage back in 1981, I was working for the Anchorage Times right downtown. And on the weekends, they had a morning edition, so we had to get up very early. And I remember about 5:30 a.m. driving down 4th Avenue one time, and I saw a large group of mostly men out in front of this bar, I'm pretty sure it was. And since I didn't live downtown, I wasn't all that familiar with it. But when I got into work, I asked one of the other employees there, what's the deal with the 25 to 30 people standing on the street out here, this early in the morning? He said, well, the bars close at 5 a.m. and they have to be closed for 1 hour, and they're waiting for them to reopen at 6 a.m. And so the problem has been here for a long time. It was less visible in those days because the bars were open 23 hours a day. And so I don't think that's the solution we want to go back to. I just wanted to give you a little bit of history there.
Appreciate it. And that perspective will be helpful as we move forward. Anything else on the work plan or anything else? Or we move into just member comments? Anything in general about the committee or our tasks that you'd like to put on the record?
I think I already said mine.
Same here.
Okay, we have audience participation. Does anyone in the audience have any comments, concerns for the committee?
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
Media? Okay. So I'm kind of hearing, I know it specifically says alcohol and drug abuse. I'm hearing it also though, like it sounds like a committee on homelessness too, because of course, there's folks who live at Carlick Manor who might be identified as chronic inebriates, but they live at Carlick Manor, they have a place to live and aren't homeless. So kind of wondering about that aspect of it a little bit, whether it's an overall issue or really tailored towards people who don't have a place to live and are identified as chronic inebriates.
I think it's an excellent question, Devin, because I've struggled with that myself as to, I think the name of the committee is important, and I don't think the name that we have is actually correct.
Okay.
Alcohol and drug abuse, because we're not talking about people that, there's people that live at home and have $1 million homes and have alcoholism and drug abuse problems. We're not talking about those people, I don't think, on this committee. We're talking sort of about the chronic inebriates and the homeless and the street people. I mean, and I don't know a catchphrase for dealing with that, but that's my understanding of what it, and if anybody has a great idea for what to call the committee to capture that idea, I'd be happy to, but that is, and not necessarily all homeless, because but if they're on the streets largely and intoxicated and in that condition, even though they may live at Carlick Manor, one of the hotels, or somewhere else, that would still be included, I think, in our view of what problem we're addressing. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I really am. And I'm just throwing this out, okay? Because I think we have enough time. We need to come up with a committee title today, hopefully. Chronic inebriates and the homeless, that's one thought.
Sounds like it could be a rock band also, I'm not sure.
I sold my guitar.
Any other suggestions? Mr. Phelps?
Well, I think you ought to probably include the mentally unstable people in this thing here, because we have quite a few of them out there too that they want to be there. But why they want to be there, we have no idea.
That is a large part of the population that we're talking about, that's correct. Ms. Nabowski.
I was just going to point back out our mission statement, because if we look at the mission statement, it identifies who we're going to be working with, but it says analysis will include mental health issues, overall impact on municipal resources and private sector, educational programs and fund resources, yada, yada, yada. So I think we've identified in here homeless citizens, chronically homeless. I don't know if there's a way we could clarify it and translate that into the title, but it seems like it's capturing a lot of what we talked about.
Yeah, true.
My comment would be that it says, though, alcohol and drug abuse amongst chronically homeless citizens, but then that sort of doesn't say, what about the non-homeless citizens, you know what I mean? So, to clarify that.
Right, or the homeless that are not,
Right.
don't have substance.
Yeah.
It's sort of a cause and effect situation too, and sometimes they do have mental problems that cause them to become alcoholics or drug abusers or both. And so I don't know how you could totally separate one from the other. And then the homeless would become, once they get to the point where they can't hold a job any longer, then the homelessness thing happens. And so that's, it's a slippery slope, I guess, is the say.
Right. Certainly mental illness and substance abuse are part of the main driving forces of the population that we're talking about. It's not all of them suffer from that, not all of them, but that is a big factor on it. But it could even, I use the term street people as a sort of,
I have to admit, I don't like that term.
I know, it sounds a little rough, but I mean, it's sort of what we're talking about the people who are just kind of
On the street?
living out there, and whether it's in the camps or in the street, you see wandering around or panhandling, and some of them have substance abuse issues, some of them have mental illnesses, some of them are homeless, some of them aren't. But that seems to be sort of the focus of the issue. But
So we're talking chronic public inebriation, homelessness, and their impacts on the municipality of Anchorage.
which is a bit of a long title for a
It
committee.
is, but I mean, I'm trying to see what we're saying.
Ms. Griffith Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Dembowski brought up a really, really good point, okay? And I don't think the title really matters in terms of, what are we going to call ourselves? Because we have, in my opinion, a really well thought out, all-inclusive, maybe a little bit tweaky mission statement. So if anything, you know, you know, we have our agenda, and for members of the public and anybody else, it's, you know, we're called a Committee on Alcohol and Drug Abuse, but we have a mission statement that takes care of, you know, what we're all about. So I'm not sure we even need to worry about necessarily changing our title.
Or goes by any other name. Be as effective.
And one more thing, I asked Amy about this right before the meeting started, but to your guys' knowledge, is this the first time there's been a committee, an assembly committee on this issue? And if so, why has it taken so long when this problem has been just so present?
Well, I've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can't remember, and Sherry's been working with me too. Do you remember a committee like this? I don't. I don't. I mean, we've had public safety committees and we've talked about this issue through the public safety committee, but I really don't remember a committee specifically
On the assembly.
on the assembly.
Because
That's
wasn't
what
there
we're
an
talking about.
alcoholism task force once that was, like the mayor
There
set
was,
up?
no, the assembly years ago had a tax evaluation task force, okay? And it was members of the public. The assembly established the committee, but it was members of the public, and, you know, alcohol tax was one of the issues that was brought forward by that committee. I'd love to get a copy of that report. It's somewhere around here.
Ms.
Thank
Mosher?
you.
I think what, through the chair, I think what Assemblymember Dombrowski is referring to is there was a homeless coordinator, and that was our current ombudsman, Daryl Hess.
That's exactly what it is.
I know in my 4 months on the assembly, this is the first time we've had this committee, so.
Right.
Yeah, this is new.
And Amy attributed it to just a different group of people on the assembly, or the specific group of people on the assembly? Would you say that's the case, or? And Amy, I don't know if you want to add to that or anything.
No, but my point is this, is I think we have a different makeup on the assembly, and there's multiple members that are passionate and want to focus on this. So I know I personally have requested from the chair that this committee be started, and I think
Right.
Odie has too.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you probably aren't familiar with a group that I started, okay, based on inebriates and homelessness and other issues in the Campbell Park area in 2009 called Take Back Our Parks. Have you heard of that?
Have heard of it, yeah. I
Okay,
didn't really just started it.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and I started it because when I first got elected to the assembly, a constituent called me and said, I've been trying to get rid of these inebriates in my area for 20 years. But what I did was empower them, okay, and I empower the community, because it's not just an issue for the assembly or the mayor, it's an issue for everybody in this community. And we meet once a month. We have somebody we used to have somebody from the CAP team, but they work different hours. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting on Monday. We have somebody from Parks and Rec, and we used to have the homeless coordinator there. We have folks from the area, folks from the Rescue Mission and from Arbor. And we've done a lot. It's been pretty darn successful in cleaning up that area. Our meeting's on Monday at noon, so you should come. But anyway, yeah, so my point in saying all that is, you know, there have been different assembly members that have done things,
Right.
but I don't remember a committee specifically to deal with this issue, other than having conversations through the Public Safety Committee, which has happened throughout the years when Joe Murdy was on the assembly. That was a long time ago. But I don't remember a committee specifically to deal with this issue, so. Thank you.
So is there a specific person or event that instigated this?
My sense is it's a compilation of things. I think there have been a lot of requests from various people in the community to deal with the problem. And I think it's just a cumulative effect in the people on the assembly and the chair of the assembly wanting to take action on it. So.
I think too, also on that statement there is this thing around the Brother Francis shelter down there has probably escalated this thing up to the top, because I understand it's.
This was in the works before that, but yeah, that's
I
certainly
think
another one of
this
those
brought it out
issues.
for committee type things.
We've been getting public reports at the end of our meetings. Recently, people reminding us about the problem down there, and it's not getting any better. And so I think that might have contributed to the fact that this committee was finally formed. We just need to find solutions, or possible solutions. Solve a small problem here, a small problem there, and eventually you're headed in the right direction. But I think we would be good if we could get some information from Daryl Hess, if he has anything left from when he was the homeless coordinator that we might be able to use it, help us focus, on possible suggestions or solutions that he may have found or received.
Sure. That's good, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the good news is, it really doesn't matter what motivated the Assembly to establish a committee right now. The fact of the matter is we're proactive. We're behaving proactively. And Amy and I have talked about it on several occasions, doing something like this. And fortunately, our chairman kind of moved us along a little bit sooner than we would have moved doing it alone. And we're ready to get busy. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Phelps?
Just have a couple of comments on that, and I appreciate you allowing me to make comments. The one thing I was, how involved should ACLU get with this committee? Because it seems like every time you want to do something to correct a problem, ACLU steps in and says, well, you can't do that. So, and then the other thing is Amy also brought up the thing on the native deal. Maybe we ought to get the South Central Foundation involved in this as far as their primary care health facility down there, because they have wellness, whatever you call them in there, and everything's available. But then to top that off, I think a lot of these people that are the native people that are coming in from the villages or ending up on the streets are brought in by the hospital. And and they give them a ticket to go home, they just don't go home. So, I think we need to look strongly at that too, because it's important. Like you said, 80% of the people that have on their individual services is native.
Appreciate those comments. As far as the ACLU, I mean, one of the issues we'll deal with are law enforcement and legal issues. And there are some legal impediments to doing what some people want to do necessarily. Some laws you can change and some laws you can't. But part of this group will be looking at that and seeing what the limits are of what we can and can't do. So
I'd like to see ACLU be part of the solution. Very
I'd like to
much so.
see every organization that you can think of be part of the solution. That would be good.
And on that note, so let's say I write something acknowledging that the committee's been formed. What should I put in there to let, maybe if someone reads the story and wants to know more or thinks the organization should get involved, what's a good way to, what's something to put in there that could be like, if you want more info on this, you should do?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the things that you need to put in your article is what our mission is.
No, yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering
I just
if,
want to
like,
make sure that you do that. Thanks.
yeah, is there like an email or like, I don't know.
Well, I think one of the things that we are definitely doing is we are extending the invitation to community partners. Anybody who has
Okay.
an organization that this topic impacts,
Yeah.
or they're trying to service this population, I think they should contact probably the clerk's office. Or would you?
They can contact the clerk's office or they can contact me directly. That's
Okay,
fine.
sure. Okay. And don't worry, I won't put your cell phone further. But just a name, maybe people might appreciate that instead of emailing me or something.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments? Seeing none, first meeting of this nameless task force is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.